I heard it before everyone else because I already know the sound of fear. It's not a scream. It is the silence that comes before. In Mornvale, the dawn always smells of fertilizer and hot iron. The mega harvests turn on, the mats groan, and the fog lifts. Today the fog did not rise. She stood still as if someone was holding the air with her palm open. My name is Major Rafael Dantas, Pale Fire Expeditionary Force. We descend in low orbit, hull red hot, with a simple mission on paper: break the abyssal choir and return the pulse. What awaited us was not on paper. The hymn of Oko began weakly, a buzzing sound at the bottom of the water. Then he skinned his ear from the inside, without volume, just pressure. Cattle lay down in the field and did not get up. The dogs crawled under the tractors. The walls sweated moisture that wasn't water. I saw stains on the concrete joints. I saw small, hard white dots growing slowly. Civilians boarded up the windows and ash. Some had cloth plugs in their ears, soaked in black sawdust. It worked for half. For the other half, it became a candle in a burial without a priest. "Dantas, singing pulse goes up 2 tones per minute," said Lieutenant Ava Cade next to me, already calibrating the Acheron resonator. "If you hit 4, no one is left standing." "No show," I replied. "Focus on marking. No trigger until I slam the door." Sergeant Morsa Inoue made a sign, high breastplate, kinetic shield on the bracelet, and short smile of someone who doesn't play the hero but doesn't get out of the way either. Corporal Luan Cravo carried the briefcase with the reels of inverse psalms. He looked like a junkyard DJ, cables, tapes, and harvester blades fastened with cable ties. Dr. Tessa Voss was behind, light, hands always clean by miracle, surgical kit on her chest, eyes that do not turn away even to protect her own soul. The drone advanced down the main street. The city was dug into the ravine, half underground, half silo ruin. At the top, the tower of the old Cathedral of Mornvale vibrated like an organ column. The audio scribbled on the channel, long harmonics, without whimsy, mathematical. A singing organ embedded in the heart of the church. The abyssal choir had closed the temple and turned it into a weapon. A boy ran past with his fingers pressing down on his temple. He tripped and fell. I turned it carefully. Eyes rolled back, thick salivation. The skin of the right ear was strange, with small reliefs, as if the body was trying to sprout thorns inside. Tessa. She knelt down, supported the boy on her lap, sang 2 low, dissonant notes, and pressed stitches on her neck. The body relaxed. She put on tampons and mild shock shots and looked at me. 10 more minutes like this, and it would become a host, he said. They are sewing corneal tissue in the cranial nerves. I signaled to the family. They pointed to the ladder that went down to the houses below. A tired father, without a beard, without a solution. I don't know how to console. I know how to promise what I can deliver. Come down. Stay together. If you hear the right bells, it is not a miracle. It's the carnation at work. Follow the ugliest beat you hear. They nodded. When dread learns to obey, we have a chance. We went to the cathedral. The facade was covered with stretched skin flags and symbols that did not match anything human. Clotheslines with small vertebrae, bone sunflowers, and a double door that had turned into ribs. Cardinal Ocosso loves theater. The audience is us. Walrus door. Harpsichord prepares counter-anthem. Ava, Ray Q on standby. Tessa, lifeline. Copied. Walrus leaned against the shield and moved forward. The hymn has gone up a tooth. The stone cracked. I felt my sternum tremble, as if the organ touched inside my bone. The sergeant put his shoulder in, made a clean force, and the door groaned and gave way. Inside, the air felt thick. Bunches of live wires hung from the ceiling, entering through the joints of the floor and climbing up columns, like tree roots in reverse. In the central nave, I saw the singing organ, a tall cylinder, covered with hardened cartilage, with slits like mouths. Each slit opened and closed, blowing the hymn. The sound did not come from the speakers. It came from the pressure of space. All around, unfinished liturgists crawled, bodies composed of pieces, muscles sewn together in spiral patterns, and bones tied with cords. They did not attack. They were not yet ready. Their liturgy requires a sign. Ava adjusted her RAQ, steady hand, pale face. "Mark the anthem with a beat," he said. "I need a signature to lock the knots." I took the glove off my left hand. I tapped my fingers on the breastplate to the rhythm of the organ. Tum, 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 tum. The hymn answered me like a beast acknowledging the challenger. I don't like to be bait, but someone needs to dance with the monster. Cravo opened the briefcase, attached harvester blades to a speaker grill, and turned the potentiometer until the hiss turned to dirty music. He dragged a wrench into the metal, creating a serration. The reverse psalm was born from there. Sweeping, dry chords, which entered through the same cracks that the hymn used. Dissonance without resolution, he said, almost smiling. A song that doesn't want to end. The liturgos hesitated. A faceless head turned in my direction as if sniffing. I took a breath and held fear in a corner of my chest. Fear is fuel, but it is also poison if you drink it pure. Ava lifted the RAQ, attached the sensor to my shoulder, and locked the phase. The display flashed red. "No, it doesn't cut yet," I said. "Wait for the organ to show your throat." We took 2 steps. The anthem changed pitch, trying to swallow our beat. The ground beneath my feet became elastic. Tessa held the back of my neck for a second, as if reminding my body to stay here. I'm back. The organ opened the cracks to the maximum, in an arc. I saw it inside. Living tissue vibrating, small bony antennae beating like reeds. Now, Ava didn't pull the trigger. She lit the RAQ. It doesn't make a sound that can be heard. It puts pressure on the body that hates. The air seems to disappear, and the world becomes too bright. It's like dying without dying. The harpsichord counter-anthem served as a rail, and the RAQ poured ash choir into the cylinder. The cartilage creaked inward, as if the city was sucking the organ. A crack closed, then another. The columns shook. The anthem lost 2 tones. "Hold," Ava whispered, her eyes fixed, a trickle of blood running down her ear. "Just half a second more." "Half," I said, "and it's over." She cut it. The silence did not come. Normal noise came. Birds outside. Leak hitting the stairs. A liturgist fell sitting up and began to disassemble on its own, muscles loosening from the knots, bones becoming bones again. The ground breathed. I breathed together. RAQ cooling down. "An activation," Ava said, her hand trembling. "Hot coil. I can handle 2 more without melting. 3, if you're willing to carry me." "We won't carry you." "You walk alone," Tessa said, already wiping the blood. "But no one does the 4th. Walrus laughed, short, breaking the tension, and kicked a cymbal on the ground until it turned to dust. Cravo leaned against the column and let his head fall back, listening to the echo of the psalm itself spread dust. I went down the aisle. I found marks, child's bones, animal bones, and traces of old graphite covered by limestone spots. Beneath the horror, a human word still lived in the stone. Refectory. A church that became a warehouse which became a weapon. The enemy has no respect. We have. I did what I always do when the room becomes a room again. I spoke to those who were left. People from Morn Vale, this is Major Dantas. Do not pray. Breathe. If they listen to beautiful music, it's bait. If they hear ugly music, it's us. Follow the ugly, stay together. If you see bones on the walls, don't touch them. If you see people on the walls, call the doctor. The city is not over. Civilian radio returned a series of clicks, their way of saying copied when they are afraid to speak. Good sign. Fear that obeys is ammunition. Ava leaned against the pillar and closed her eyes for a second. Tessa attached a better plug to her ear. Walrus spray marked the word clean on the entrance arch. Cravo picked up the blades and wrote down the tuning of the place. I climbed 2 steps and looked out the window. On the horizon, silos breathed like lungs. Around the grain mill, I saw bone antennae. Cardinal Ochoso was there, eating the city under the floor. "The next target is the plant," I said, "the heart of the choir." Tessa took me by the arm. "You bled too, Major." I touched my ear, warm, sticky. She gave me a tampon and I accepted it as someone who accepts food at a relative's house. I looked at the team. Right people, in the wrong place, at the necessary time. Humanity has a reputation for being noisy. Today, we are tuned to noise. We left the cathedral slowly. The wind brought back the smell of fertilizer. A man with a crumpled hat took the plug out of his ear, looked at me in the sky, and said without asking, "Are they coming back?" "Always," I replied, "but so do we." He nodded. Me too. I ran my hand over the rack's hull and felt the heat that still lived there. It is not a pretty weapon. It is a weapon that works. Sometimes that's enough. I heard the hymn trying to stand up in the distance, thin as a razor. I felt my fingers beat the beat on the breastplate, ready for the next marking. I looked at my troops, march, and remember, we did not come to pray. The anthem tried to stand up again as we crossed the street of silos. It was not sound. It was an intention of sound. The asphalt cracked into curved lines, as if the city wanted to learn a strange alphabet. I kept my hand on Morsa Inoue's shoulder and left him in front. Kinetic shield raised, he advanced like a walking gate. Ava Cade was close behind with the Acheron resonator hanging from a chest rail. Cravo dragged the briefcase of inverse psalms like a market cart. Dr. Tessa closed with a small step and the eyes of a surgeon who has seen everything and still sees what matters. The cathedral dominated the neighborhood, tower torn off, stained glass windows covered with translucent bone, holy door transformed into rib railing. I spray drew a black triangle next to the entrance. It is our way of saying, here, humanity hit first. At the top, birds tried to fly without rhythm and failed. The abyssal choir educates nature with violence. "Carnation, give me a tick for Raku," Ava said, touching the sensor glued to my armor. "Ugly or too ugly?" "Ugly as you stand." The cable mounted the mower blade grid on top of a makeshift amplifier, turned on a pedal generator, and began scraping the metal with a wrench. The sound came out harsh, pure friction, but there was mathematics behind that dirt. I struck the armature of the singing organ bar hidden inside, and the harpsichord pushed the dissonance until it rubbed against the anthem. Two dogs in the corners of the square lay down at the same time. Then one got up, trembling, and walked in the opposite direction of what would have been natural, a sign that the counter-anthem had grabbed. "Walrus," I said, pointing. "Fold the darker rib. The white ones are ornamental. The dark one carries a load." He stuck his foot in the frame and forced it. The door creaked wetly. We entered together, arm in arm. The hallway smelled of vinegar and iron. Unfinished liturgists hung from the tracks, like clothes from a bad clothesline. The floor was a mosaic of old ivory and soot. In the background, a damp glow. The singing organ. The hymn came in one piece, like a wind in water. My ribs vibrated. "Don't shoot yet," I whispered to myself, though it was to Ava. "Score first." Ava gently leaned the sensor against my shoulder and synchronized. I hit the breastplate. Tum, 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 element. The RAQ's display flashed faint green. The first lock. The organ stuffed cracks. 3 liturgists on the ground woke up for good, mounting arms where they were missing. One of them opened a new mouth in place of his chest and sang half a tone above the main anthem, as if he intended to lead the choir. Horror wants an audience. Walrus moved forward. His shield absorbed the attack that didn't exist as an object, but existed as an intention. The body shook without being hit. He laughed shortly. "I like this sound. A human making fun of the impossible." "Lieutenant, I also marked the harmonica," Harpsichord said, fiddling with the buttons. "I can suck the energy of the secondary if you give it light." Tessa was already on her knees, assembling a lifeline with 2 saturation sensors and a black sawdust gun. I marked the time. Ava slid her finger on the trigger but waited. The RAQ is hungry for haste, and the haste that kills is almost the same as that which saves. It differentiates those who can stand it. "Now!" I shouted as the organ opened 4 slits at once. The Acheron resonator swallowed the Kravo's counter hymn and returned a pressure that we feel in the flesh. It's an explosion without noise, a suction of the world. The slits closed like choking mouths. The liturgos lost their footing. One fell on all fours, and another tried to hang on the rail and broke his own arm. The anthem dropped a tone. "Half a second," Ava forced. "Half," I confirmed. When she cut it, the space recomposed itself with a crack. Only then did I realize that I was holding my breath. I let go slowly, so I wouldn't faint in anyone's face. Her visor still glowed warm. "One of the coils went into the bag," Ava said, voice low in pain. "But redundancy holds 2 activations. 3 if I fry a finger." "Don't fry, no," Tessa said, changing the plug in her ear with a firmness that only doctors and mothers have. We walked to the ship. Crumpled liturgists tried to join legs in a pile of tendons. One of them whispered in a language I didn't want to recognize. Kravo increased the contact noise to muffle without turning on the RAQ. Walrus took from the altar a cloth with symbols made of herringbone. Underneath, I found an old wood panel with knife marks. Someone had had time to try to rename the place. One piece said "Re," and the rest was covered with limestone. I kept looking until I was sure. Cafeteria. A church that had become a warehouse that had become a weapon, as I had seen in the prologue. I repeat the view because repetition, here, is not a spell. It is a memory of function. Eat, gather, share. Remember this when the enemy gives you theater. A snap ago. 2 liturgos decided it was time. They advanced in silence. Opposite knees, wrong structure. Walrus turned the shield and received them as someone holding a nightclub door on a bad night. The impact was strange. Meat did not hit metal. Intention beat will. He pushed back, planted his foot, and looked at me as if to say, his turn. I pulled out the heavy-handled knife, cut the tendons of the first, and thrust the blade under the bone of the second. Tessa held my elbow so I wouldn't lose the axis. I stepped to my side so as not to dance to their music. The first collapsed without theatricality, like a bag of rice. The second tried to sing and let out only a breath. "No mercy," Walrus said, breathing heavily. "No waste," I corrected. The organ contracted again, preparing another leap in tone. The ceiling dripped out. Living filaments tried to find our mouths and ears. Kravo threw black sawdust spray and covered the strands. They snapped, bending like worms in salt. "Major, we have an echo of Cardinal Ochoso," Ava warned, pointing to the spectrum panel. "This is a prologue. The main anthem is coming from the power plant belt." I nodded. I had already seen this on another moon. The cult plant satellite chanting organs to bend the city and prepare the feast. The main course sings lower and deeper. "Let's sweep this ship and put a civilian marker," I said. "No heroic image, just work. The work goes like this. Walrus sweeps shrapnel and ribs. I break symbols to cut telemetry of faith. Harpsichord screws sensors in places a liturgist can't reach without turning his head upside down. And Tessa evaluates every spot, every short breath, and every finger tremor, and decides who goes down for shelter and who goes up for evacuation. Ava disassembles the burnt coil and assembles another one with tape and faith in human engineering. The radio on my shoulder squeaked in a salesman's voice. Sweaty fear. "Major, here is Armazem Dulemi. The song comes from the ground. The wheat is beating alone on the mats. Lock the treadmills." Fills the main shaft with sawdust. If you hear a voice that sounds like your mother's, you don't respond. Your mother is deaf to that. A nervous laugh that became copied. Good sign. Polite fear. We finished the cleaning without romanticism. On the way out, a civilian with a crumpled hat came pushing a stroller with 2 children huddled under a canvas blanket. He stopped and pointed to Ava. "Did you make the sound go away?" "We did it together," she said, without taking her eye off RAQ. "You held your breath at the right time." "I don't know if I held it. He held it. The city is standing, isn't it?" He nodded. The kind of agreement that becomes fuel. We continued to the square. The sky seemed lower. Tractors immobile, fire extinguished. dust that did not fall. The anthem went around like someone looking for a subject. I wrote it down on the wrist. It turned down. The change in tone usually indicates that the cardinal perceived loss and called for reinforcement. Very good. Reinforcement needs to show himself to work. When it appears, we measure it. Path to the grain mill? I asked a woman who was handing out cloth tampons. Underneath, through the sinkholes. The old channels lead straight to the central silo, but the ground sings. So we sing uglier. She didn't laugh. I appreciate it when they don't laugh at phrases that are only true. We enter through the sinkholes. The smell changed. Sweet mold, electrolyte, wet metal. So is the sound. The anthem became more physical, brushing the eardrum like the nail of someone who never learned to cut. I ordered Cravo to lower the volume of the reverse psalm so as not to tire the team's head and asked Morsa to go forward with the shield almost horizontal. The tunnel narrowed at 3 elbows. The S turnstile. Tessa groped walls, growing fabrics in the pores of the concrete. They planted a matrix here before arriving at the cathedral. They plan to harvest, I said. We are going to burn the field. A medium, spider-shaped liturgist descended from the maintenance skylight. There was no time for rehearsal. Walrus welcomed the shield and hit the edge of the creature as if closing a thick book. I passed the blade underneath, and Ava, without RAQ, let out a brief kinetic shot that nailed the rest to the ceiling. The harpsichord hit 2 notes on the brass and let the reverberation eat the echo. Tessa turned the face of a child who was nearby so that she would not see. Then he took out of his pocket 2 stickers with the smell of camphor and stuck them under his father's nose. It helps to remember that the world exists. We went up 2 more shots. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, a grid floor, and the silence of an electric station. In front, the corridor that led to the plant. The anthem was deeper and slower. Cardinal Ocaso wanted us to feel every step. Position, I said. RAQ is mute to the heart. No fourth wall with the enemy. We don't put on a show. We deliver service. Ava breathed through her nose, adjusted the rail, and changed the hot coil for the new one. The harpsichord tuned the counter-anthem to a silo-sized dissonance. Walrus tested the axis of the shield, snapped his fingers, and gave me that just points look. Tessa squeezed my temples for 2 seconds. That alone organizes the world. March, I said. The cathedral is left behind, clean enough to remember who's boss. The corridor ahead jumped with emergency light. The abyssal choir sang bass. I beat my breastplate at the pace. And all I wanted was for the enemy to understand quickly. No one sings louder than our artillery. Morn Vale seemed to whisper as we exited the sinkholes. The big anthem was still coming from the plant, but the city around us spoke quietly about things. Chains giving loose rings, plastic flags brushing corners, and water in the gutters singing out of time. The abyssal choir uses the world as an instrument. We ruin the tuning until it becomes noise that only humans understand. I took the first walk around the liberated block. Houses with doors open to the outside like wounds. Windows sealed with planks and flour bags. Black sawdust in small piles, ready to throw into the mouths of the drains. Women with buckets and men with sledgehammers. Children in caps and caps. Big eyes. Walrus and Tessa went door to door explaining the basics. Broken breaths, steps that don't repeat, and changed schedules. Cravo installed inverse psalm antennas on poles, oriented towards the junctions of the street. Ava checked the RAQ, now with 2 cold reels, as if counting ammunition in a war that does not tolerate error. 3 empty intersections, she said, looking at the heat map. If the anthem tries to go up here, I'll cut it. But I have no room for heroism. No heroism, I replied. Heroism is the enemy's excuse to make you beautiful and dead. An old man approached, thin as a stick, with a rumpled hat and a streak of gray in his mustache. Major, the seed market no longer has people. Only flies are standing still. The floor sounds hollow. Close the market, I said. It opens a hole in the floor and pours sawdust. If the fly doesn't fly, there's an anthem stuck down there. He nodded, as if receiving a recipe for bread. That's what I like to see. Dread that learns a task. Before heading to the plant, we cleaned the west sector. Walrus opened a locked gate using the shield as leverage. Inside, 3 civilians huddled near the turned-off refrigerator. A child with his eyes high. Tessa arrived first. 2 taps on the neck. A soft, reverse, almost inaudible song. The girl slowly returned to her body. The father cried without noise, which is the most serious cry that exists. Carnation marked the bottom of the walls with chalk, an ugly sequence. Intermission, intermission, pause. It's a mute reminder of how to get out alive if the ground starts vibrating again. We returned to the street. The air became denser, as if the sun had entered a cloud that no one saw. A thin tremor ran through the asphalt. Choral ambush, harpsichord said quietly. The little hymn comes from the drains. Wedge line, I said. Shield in front, Ray Q on guard, medic in the middle. If something whispers your name, it's a lie. We entered through the corridor of old sewers, damp cement, splattered with white mold, smelling of sour cereal. The hymn here was a thread, a mouth talking behind the wall. Walrus was scraping the shield on the corners to wake up the things that pretend to sleep. In the second elbow, a liturgist burst out of the side canal. A man's body sewn to 4 thin arms, a horrible mask of bone, and the real mouth in place of the sternum. He tried to sing, and his voice rose through the metal like a blade. My turn, Ava said. She did not fire. She bit the antenna with the sensor, locked phase by my armor. I hit my chest, boom, tum, tum, and lit up the Reiki for less than half a second. Silent explosion. Liturgo collapsed like an umbrella in reverse. Without beautiful blood, it just goes away. Tessa poked my temple. I hadn't even noticed that she was holding her breath again. From the ceiling, 2 more fell together, tied together by viscera, 2 heads blowing alternating notes. Cravo scraped the blade on the iron frame, generating a dissonance of exemplary ugliness, and Walrus received them in a lateral push, as if guiding a drunk out of the bar. I cut a tendon. Ava didn't shoot. We didn't waste the 2 coils for dirty enemies. Tessa stuck a camphor patch on me without asking permission. When it was over, the team's heavy breathing and a trickle of water came down the ramp. I stepped sideways so as not to give the tunnel the satisfaction of leading me straight to the end. Did you hear? Tessa asked in a low voice. What? Walrus. My name. Someone sang my name with my voice. Memory intrusion, Carnation said. Stay behind me and I'll burn it with an iron. He leaned the radio against a concrete pestle and played 2 crooked notes. The effect was physical. The air stopped sticking to the skin. Tessa breathed better. I moved on. Cardinal Ochoso turns the city into a chorus of mnemonic gossip. We respond with even uglier offense. We climbed up the maintenance pit to the grain mill yard. 30 giant silos hugged the square. Tubes like horns, mats covered in flour dust. The ossiferous antennae trembled, emitting harmonics that a sensible person would call a cry that did not deserve to be born. In the center, a discharge mouth with an open grid, like an endless well. Deep hymn coming from here, Ava confirmed. I don't see the cardinal yet, but he's in the field. Harpsichord, give me a counter hymn for thick metal. Walrus, it makes me shadow and line. Tessa takes everyone's pulse at every corner. If the number is too pretty, we are dying. Done, Tessa said. We enter the plant. The ground vibrated at the ankle, up the leg, trying to teach my spinal cord to dance. I saw treadmills turning on and off by themselves. I saw dry grains walking as if they had a magnet. I saw symbols scratched on the cement with a spoon. The enemy likes to write where it hurts. The anthem formed a wave that crossed the ship. Walrus almost lost his balance. He grasped the shield with both hands and snapped it into place as if it were a ship's door in a storm. 3 liturgists with spine columns in place of a spine emerged from the sackcloth line. Harpsichord slammed the amplifier into the railing, created a hearing saw, and they hesitated. I moved forward, cut the first one in the knee backwards, pulled the second one by the shoulder, and pushed it into the hopper. Ava used the Ray Q for a quarter of a second, just to go out of tune with the anthem. The third plummeted like a dummy, and the floor accepted the weight back. In the side aisle, a procession came towards us, faithful of flesh, still alive, with empty eyes, each carrying a piece of bone as a candle. The song came out of their mouths in half. Tessa went ahead. "Get down!" she cried, and then sang the most delicate reverse psalm I have ever heard. 2 short notes, 1 long. Pause. He turned the sound inside them, and his knees gave way. Walrus took the first 2 and leaned against the wall, without breaking. Cravo and I took the bones out of his hands. Ava turned off the RAQ, because a gun that is turned off doesn't try to save the world unnecessarily. And it was then that he spoke. Not in the living room. Inside the head. Voices from several mouths, without heat, without saliva. "Cardinal Ocaso, for those of you who profane, I am a cathedral and ask, do you sing death? We sang too. We bring chorus and destiny. There is no grave to which they will take their pride. I hit the armor, boom, tum, tum-tum, just to remind my body in which church I pray. I answered loudly, because alive speaks with air. No one here came to pray. We came to work. The anthem became thicker. The ceiling dripped flour like bad snow. Ava blinked, dizzy. "Dantas, I have 2 safe activations. If I give it the third, we need immediate cooling. Or I cook the coil on the brisket. The fourth does not exist. Let's start the economy now then." Carnation dismantled the briefcase in a hurry and madness. He replaced the harvester blades with grain sieves and chains to create a more serious reverse psalm of an entire silo. He made the square become an instrument. The new counter-anthem trembled in its chest like a big engine. Walrus smiled for the first time in the day. "I like this band." We went through the walkway that surrounded the central well. The hymn came out of there, deep, like the sea on a bad night. Tessa stopped for a second and put her hand on the back of my head. It's her trick, to say, "Stay here," without wasting a word. We saw the ossiferous mother antenna emerge from the mouth. It was a white trunk, branching like horns, beating bone reeds into air cavities. The cardinal was under the power plant, using the columns as organ pipes. The anthem broke 2 light bulbs at once. The catwalk responded with a sad hum. "Now I need to cut," Ava said, her hand firmly on the trigger. "Signal," I asked, and knocked. Tum, tum-tum, until the metal vibrates. Cravo pushed the saw seriously. Walrus locked his knee. Tessa breathed for me. Ava lit up the rack at the edge of the cliff. Explosion without sound. The mother antenna bent 1 finger, then 2. A fissure ran through the trunk, releasing white flour. The anthem did not die, but it lost its cut. First activation of the day. I counted to 3 before I remembered how to breathe. The choir shouted with 100 voices that were not here. The roof has put water in all the lamps. Liturgists rolled downstairs, banging heads without rule. The harpsichord threw more current into the amplifier. Walrus made his way with shield blows. Tessa sang softly, patching up a glass-cut woman who hadn't even noticed the injury. "One more," Ava said, in a low, clean voice. "I do." "One more," I confirmed. "Then we'll run." It lit up again, smaller and precise, like a scalpel. The mother antenna broke the equivalent of a knee. A cold flash rose from his mouth, burning the air. Second activation. The RAQ beeped for the limit temperature. Ava staggered a step, and Tessa leaned her shoulder against her. I stuck my hand to the railing, looked down, and felt the cardinal's gaze measure me from within the darkness. "It doesn't end here," the voice said again, in many mouths. "You sing gray, we sing bones. Bones stay." "Gray too," I replied, and the sentence came with the taste of iron. Stepping back, we leave civil markers along the way, chalk on the handrails, signs on the doors, and bags of sawdust at intersections. The harpsichord set the antennae to vibrate when the anthem went up. Walrus left 2 barricades ready. Tessa pinned a short list to the wall. "If the floor sings, lie on the left side. If the head sings, cover the right ear. If the heart races, It breathes as if it were in a hurry and stopped having. Before we dive into the next tunnel, I talked about the civilian channel without prose and the way it works. People of Morn Vale. The West Square is ours. The seed market closes. The routes marked with ugly chalk are the right ones. Let's cut the throat of the main anthem. Stay with us. If you want to know when the city will breathe again without help, follow this channel and activate the alert. Don't let the choir sing in your place. The next transmission comes from the heart of the silo. Turned off. Ava tightened the rack's strap. Carnation turned a knob and smiled, dirty with flour and pride. Walrus slammed his fist on my shoulder. Tessa made that small gesture that reorganizes my world, and I, with Cardinal Okoso's name stuck to my tongue like a thorn, gave the order that everyone wanted to hear. March. Next note. Heart. We left the plant's yard and entered the fields. Mornvale by day was yellow and quiet. Now it is gray and full of voices that use no mouth. The irrigation pivots spun without water, and bone pendants stuck to the bars like rosaries. The wind beat and made each bone touch the other, a dry, rhythmic sound. The Coro Abyssal had transformed the farm into an instrument. I walked ahead, rifle crossed in my chest. Walrus 2 steps to the side with the shield, and Ava behind measuring the temperature of the RAQ with her hand on the body of the gun, as if checking for a child's fever. Cravo pushed the briefcase, eyes on the horizon and on the cables, already calculating how to steal music from the enemy. Tessa looked at us, not the path. She is always the one who notices when someone breaks inside. In the first pivot, the ground was marked with recent circles. The deep hymn came from the plant, but the field had minor hymns, rehearsals, and test mouths. Old grains moved like animals in a nest. Walrus poked with his boot. They planted in their own harvest, he commented, his voice full of suppressed nausea. Harvest, harvest, said Carnation dryly. Beautiful in their heads, ugly in the world. A harvester appeared at the edge of his vision. It didn't come running. It came like an animal that learned to walk upright, rails marking grooves fused with heat. There were seams in the hull, bone plates secured with clamps, and 2 hands made of rotating forks in place of the mouthpiece. Inside, a chorus of short voices supported a drone in the background. The engine sang wrong. No RAQ now, I warned. We reserve it for the heart. Cravo opened the briefcase and took out a harvester spear and 2 sieves of fine metal grain. He attached the sieves to the amplifier with clamps, leaned the side of the lance against the meshes, and dragged slowly, creating a grainy, dirty, viscous bass. The sound spread across the field like trapped thunder. The harvester hesitated. The internal choir stumbled over the note itself. Thread dissonance, Cravo announced. Idea stolen from old turbine. Walrus, flank, I said. We both advanced to the sides, I through the shadow of the pivot, and he through the deeper groove. The hand of the machine tried to catch us. Walrus received the shield and pushed back, knee locked. The claw creaked. I went in from the bottom and stuck the blade between 2 new boards. The metal screamed, half bone, half iron. I pushed until I felt it give way. Tessa screamed my name, not to stop me, but to remind me of where I was. I dropped the blade, took out the rifle, and placed 3 shots at the point that Cravo marked with the beat. Clack, 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 in ugly time. The engine coughed and died. The harvester fell to the side like a slaughtered ox, and was quiet. 2 liturgos came out from under the machine, smeared with cereal dust, eyes sewn together. They came with pieces of machete tied to their shins, their bodies adapted to turn. Walrus also spun, a dance that he learned by knocking on bar doors and that is now used for war. I cut one in the tendon, the other tried to sing, and Cravo passed the spear through the sieve, cutting the sound in half. Tessa pushed one of the bodies aside with her foot, looked into the face, and whispered something I didn't hear. The body relaxed. I don't know if there was anyone else there to listen. We walk under the pivot bar, bones beating like dry rain. At each junction, someone had hung from the animal's bone, ribs, or jaws. Everything had an acoustic function. It vibrated at small frequencies that added to the large ones. Cravo was deregulating with the stick, changing a tooth, removing a wire, and silencing a rosary. Tessa collected human bones when she found them, made a cloth wrap, and marked them with a cross without a symbol, just 2 lines. This is how you give someone back to the world when there is no time. In the distance, 3 tractors walked alone, dragging chains that sang. I wanted to ignore it, but the sound of them hit my wrong ribs. Ava touched my wrist. If the RAQ gets cold, I'll get 2 clean activations today. If I use one now, it calms the field and clears the way. If I keep it, we arrive at the heart with margin. Guard, I replied too quickly, and saw in her eyes the cut that my haste made. Guard, because the heart kills more people with less sound. She nodded. Walrus understood the conversation without listening. He tightened the shield strap and went ahead. We enter a storage shed. Bags stacked to the ceiling, rail lines on the floor, metal hoppers dripping dust. The air was thick. The little hymn here was a childish, insistent whisper, asking us to remember things that were not ours. My finger on the trigger itched. I aimed at a figure on the right, a small silhouette, hair tied up. Ava. My hand started to close the shot on its own. Major, Tessa said, very close, very firm, her hand on my temples, her thumb touching the bone she knows. Looked. The world focused. The figure on the right became a sack of grain with a rope hanging from it. The children's hymn changed its timbre, upset, like a contradicted child. The harpsichord kicked the amplifier and generated a square, ugly beat, which cut the whisper into 3 pieces. Walrus had the shield already in front of me, wall body. Ava had a short smile, not one of forgiveness or partnership. Mnemonic intrusion, Carnation said. The Cardinal does this when he knows the name. Don't name it. He already has a name, I said. You're going to die with this one. At the back of the shed, a crane moved a pair of tweezers by itself, gluing bags to the wall as if they were mortar. Behind the bags, bones formed the design of a cathedral. The countryside was better than the city for the choir's artists. There were no people to contest. Walrus went to the base of the wall and stuck there, with black spray, the triangle, and the word, we. It is not a symbol of worship. It's a reminder to the mind. There are people here. People make noise. People rule. The tractors arrived at the yard, chains singing louder. Ava looked at me as if asking without asking. I denied it with a short gesture. Harpsichord, turn this singing into a break. He pulled a cable from the amplifier, attached one of the chains to the nearest tractor chassis, and touched the plug to the metal. The sound changed phase and created a beat. The chains began to wrap around themselves. The first tractor braked, the second hit him, and the third tried to turn around and got stuck in the column. Walrus pushed the third with the shield until it broke the shaft. The courtyard breathed. By evening, the flower mist had thickened. The major anthem beat in the chest like a nail in green wood. We were close to the heart. We could feel the mother antenna under our feet, beating bone reeds in air cavities. Ava checked the reels of the RAQ, cold enough, still scared in the metal. I have 2, she said. The third puts me down. The fourth does not exist. You don't fall, Tessa said. If you fall with us. We entered through a narrow hallway, old concrete wall and bones tucked into pores like plants. The ground gave way a finger. Walrus grabbed my vest and pulled it in one gesture, saving me from falling into the well. Carnation dropped his baton and laughed humorlessly. They're carving a ladder out of vertebrae, he said, pointing. Horror with aesthetics is just marketing, I replied. Break. Walrus slammed the shield on the edge and knocked over a row of bones that made a cracked cymbal sound. Tessa pulled 2 children from the gap, powdery white skin, eyes empty with fright. He put on tampons, glued on camphor stickers, poked his shoulders, and sang 2 short notes. Returned. Not everything. Enough. On field 2, we saw a procession. Not of believers, of complete liturgists, 4 meters high, with a column of spines and ribs enlarged like wings. They carried the base of a bone tower, and she sang as she walked. The choir that came from there beat on the floor of the earth. I thought about asking for the RAQ. I looked at Ava. I remembered the heart. I kept the order in my tongue like a knife. Carnation, steal their voices. He looked around, measuring resources. He saw a broken harvester with its blades exposed. He saw metal barrels, saw wire. In 3 minutes, he set up a garbage organ, blades touching barrels by vibration, wire stuck creating poor resonance. He turned on the amplifier, and it played horribly. Not ugly pretty. Ugly. That works. The procession's anthem faltered. One liturgist lost his step. 2 missed the note, and the base of the tower hit the ground with the wrong compass and broke a reed. Walrus went underneath with the shield, lifted it with his whole body, and I stuck stun grenades into the bone sockets. Tessa pulled the civilians back. The grenades exploded tamely without light, just empty. The Liturgos gave in as a structure that loses a screw. Ava leaned her forehead against the RAQ's butt for a second. I understood the request. I still denied it. Heart. At the end of the camp, we reached the bridge that led to the central silo. The anthem was a still wind, the handrail sweats, the floor hollow. Tessa grabbed my arm. You're reeling. I am. I don't lie to doctors. She put her fingers on my temples, pushed in a colon, and pulled her chin to line up the bite. The world has fitted a degree. It's collective intrusion now, she said. He's using city memory to invade us. He speaks of us with the voice of Mornvale. The voice really came. My dead mother called me in a way that only she did. Cravo increased the serration. Walrus said a bad word that I wouldn't repeat in front of a child. Ava took a deep breath and held the gun as a hug. I hit the breastplate. Tum, 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 tum. The bridge stopped sweating. Crossed. On the other side, the mouth of the silo is open. Inside, dark and corner. The mother antenna certainly stuck in the well like the root of an inverted tree. Cardinal Acosso speaking for 1,000 inmates. I put my hand against the wall. I felt a vibration that seemed like giant steps. They were not steps. They were reed beats. Plan, I said, and each one repeated. Plan. Harpsichord opens the acoustic cut and makes the silo turn into a throat. Walrus holds the right side with the shield, preventing a hug. Tessa is in the middle, half a height. Any fall, she is the rope. Ava only shoots at my signal, twice at most. Everyone nodded. Horror becomes mechanical when the right people share weight. We enter the silo ring. The sound was thick, hitting the diaphragm. Harpsichord put the garbage organ to sing with the enemy, not against it, and then changed a screw. The room bent an inch. The mother antenna responded angrily and opened a tooth note. Walrus planted his feet. Tessa steadied her hands. Ava raised her gun, calm as a surgeon. I hit the armor. Boom. Tum, 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 until my rib asks for rest. The Cardinal's voice came without metaphor. I know the name your mother gave you. She did too, I replied. And she gave me something else you don't have. Education. Mine tells you to shut up. The anthem went up a notch. The mother antenna showed fiber. Ava tilted the gun. I raised my hand. No, not now. Heart deserves a whole blow. We went down 1 level, 2, 3. The air became sweet with mold. My mouth filled with saliva. The harpsichord made the organ cry. Walrus held a ladder with his body. Tessa touched the back of my neck. I found my line in the middle of the noise. Next note, I said quietly. Heart of silo, and the world, obedient as a machine built by stubborn people, responded with the pulse I needed to hear. The final corridor trembled like an animal's throat. We spiraled down the ring of the central silo, and each step returned the beat of the mother antenna like a blow to the bone. Harpsichord kept the garbage organ screaming at the right frequency so we wouldn't let the anthem hit us entirely. Walrus was in front, shield open, and his metal sang with the ladder in a friction that reminded me of a ship's dock in bad seas. Ava weighed the rack against her chest as if measuring her own son's pulse. Tessa came in the middle, hands ready to reassemble whatever fell. The walls were full of bones stuck in the concrete, like roots that sprouted inward. The smell, sour flour, iron, and a bitter almond in the background, old and formal death. The abyssal choir likes ceremony, not me. On level 3, the floor gave way and showed a lined vertebrae, forming the staircase that Cravo had called Elegantinha. Walrus slammed the shield and broke half of it. The pieces rolled down, making a cracked cymbal sound down below. The anthem changed a quarter of its tone to angry. I replied by beating my breastplate. Tum, 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 tum. The body remembers who is in charge when you give a firm measure. Coils? I asked. Cold, Ava replied. 2 safe activations. The 3rd throws me to the ground. The 4th does not exist. Let's go with 2, I said, and I kept the urge to ask for a miracle. Miracle is a beautiful name for bad luck. The central shaft opened to our left. Inside, the mother antenna rose like a white tree trunk, made of hardened cartilage and bone reeds. The song that came out of there was low, more sensation than sound, and hit places on the body that have no name. The bottom of the chest, the space behind the jaw, and a point between the eyebrows. Cardinal Ocaso spoke inside the hymn. The harvest is grateful. Bring yourselves. Tessa leaned 2 fingers on the back of my neck. Was. Cravo turned a screw on the scrap organ and made the room bend an inch, as if the air chose not to be straight. Walrus planted his feet. The first activation opens the chest, Ava said dryly. The second goes through the bone. Do it like this then, I said. Carnation, give him the compass of a crane. Walrus, hold the right. Tessa, anchoring in the middle, I mark. She didn't smile. He just set the sensor against my armor, and I hit it. The RAQ recognizes tum, 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 tum. Cravo extracted a rumble of low granules from the sieves and barrels, as if the silo had a heart of ours too. Ava breathed through her mouth, calculated for half a second, and lit up. Explosion without sound. The mother antenna shrunk the reeds, as if being scolded by the diaphragm. The lamps in the ring burst all at once and came back with half light. A white thread ran down the torso fissure. First activation. I felt the world come back as if someone had taken cotton wool from my ear. Cardinal Ocaso replied with 100 voices, "The bone remembers, the ash forgets. The ash stays where it needs to be," I said loudly, using air, not my head. "Because the enemy loves to pull you into the mind where doubt lives." The anthem tried to lick us with a tooth note, all the reeds tuning for the same attack. Harpsichord kicked the amp and pinned a wire to the railing. The scrap organ rose half a tone on the wrong side, and the Cardinal's attack grazed him. Still, the ring shook. Walrus held the ladder with his body, his muscles vibrating like thick rope. "Monday?" Ava asked. Her eyes were clear, but I saw the pain in the way she held her jaw. "Wait for the sigh," Tessa said, not looking at anyone. "When everything holds air, that's when you cut. Perfect." The choir also breathes, not like us, but it breathes. Waited. Cravo kept the world ugly. The pit held the air for 2 long seconds. Ava lit up in the middle of the void. The pressure hit the antenna and split the torso to the next ring. Second activation. The anthem staggered. A rain of flour fell like tired snow. "Temperature at the limit," Ava whispered. "If I go to the 3rd, I'll fall. It's not theater." I looked at rock bottom. I saw blades of bone spinning slowly. I saw ribs attached to the concrete walls, turning the silo into an animal's throat. I heard a voice that was not just a voice. "I know the name your mother called you when you first bled on the knee." My finger looked for the trigger, as if looking for childhood in my pocket. Tessa took my hand away and held mine. The world has fallen into place. The harpsichord played 2 crooked notes that I don't know how to write here. Walrus slammed his shield on the railing to remind me of the weight. "Either give me the 3rd, Ava said, "or we'll have more liturgists than we have medicine." They were already coming. Tall liturgists, ribs growing like wings, climbing the wall with hands that were just long fingers. The procession paved the way for the antenna to heal. I measured the well. I measured my team. I measured the city that was breathing up there, with children with cloth plugs and gray in their ears. "The 3rd is mine," I said. Ava looked at me as if warning that it will hurt. Tessa squeezed my temples, a touch that ties body and head. Cravo understood before I explained. He lowered the organ close to me, connected the RAC cable to an auxiliary coil, and put my armor as a source. The Acheron resonator converts ambient fear into overpressure, but if you are scared enough, it doesn't search in the air. Search in you. It is contraindicated. It's efficient. Major, Walrus, if I fall, pull me. If I scream, leave me. Ava, when I say now, you light up and don't hold back extra time. Tessa, if I try to sleep, it hits me. Clove, give me the cut that breaks teeth. I closed my eyes and went to get what I needed. The fear of losing the city, the fear of hearing my name in the voice of someone I don't know, the fear of missing my hand and killing an ally, and the fear that no one will come, that no one will hear, and that humanity is just noise. I filled my chest with it until my body trembled. The RAQ felt it. The sensor bit my armor. The world sank an inch. Now, Ava lit up. The pressure went from me to the antenna like a current taking shape. The anthem froze and scratched. Straws broke like teeth. The antenna opened in fissures, 3, 4, 5, until it showed flesh inside. Flesh that wasn't meat, a jelly of ground bone and nerve. The Liturgos lost their hands. Walrus pushed them back into the wall. Cravo threw the organ to the grave and held the room upright. Tessa slapped me in the face as I fell, and I came back with the taste of iron on my tongue. Third activation completed, Ava reported through her teeth. The RAQ's display beeped red. Fried coil. Half-life system. I still walk. Come on, Tessa confirmed, already putting a new plug in her ear. Steady hand, clear eyes. And the Major doesn't sleep. I don't sleep, I lied. Cardinal Ocaso shouted with a graveyard of voices. It didn't last long. The mother antenna dropped one level, taking a piece of the ring with it. The well began to fill with white powder and hair-like strands. Liturgists plummeted, crumbling into sacks of wheat. We retreated 3 steps, Walrus pulling my vest with one hand and me beating my breastplate slowly. Tum, tum, tum tum, a compass to remind you of what the church is. He has come down, Carnation said, hearing the echo. This here was just a pulpit. Then the homily is downstairs, I said. The voice came out of a place that hurt. The coils need cooling, Ava warned. If I light it now, I'll turn it on. From here we cut with hand and noise. The RAQ returns at the climax. The next ring led to a mezzanine overlooking the lower nave of the silo. A structural temple, concrete columns dressed in ribs, makeshift ivory walkways. In the center, the altar, a throne of antennas, and seated on it, a shadow with bones. I didn't see the face. I saw forms of people tied to the throne by living cables. The smaller singing organs plugged in as harmonics. Ochoso, I whispered, and the name took my breath back. He did not answer with a word. He replied by tuning the reeds until each rib in the room vibrated. The whole ship sang like a bad violin. The rail beneath my feet wanted to learn to touch my weight. This is how these bastards dominate, teaching objects to have will. Harpsichord, body of a broad choir, I asked. I want noise that no ear respects. He assembled, with haste and genius, a wall of rust, sieves, chains, blades, and barrels, all touching the amplifier as if they were one. The sound that came out wasn't music, it was industry. The temple collapsed. The anthem has lost a thread. Walrus laughed in that short way that is half victory, half promise of too much. Beware of believers, Tessa warned. And they appeared, humans walking like sleepwalkers, eyes in glass, each holding a bone as a candle. Behind them were smaller liturgists, ready to catch whatever fell. Don't hurt them if you can, I said. Walrus was one for all. He took 3 from behind with the shield and took the candle bones from his hand with the other arm. I spent cutting chords. Cravo hit beats to confuse knees. Tessa sang the reverse that turns off trance. The line knew for a second that it was living again and stopped moving. Ava was last, without RAQ, with a short weapon, looking at the throne as a surgeon who has already chosen where she will cut. The cardinal raised half a body, and I saw, quickly, his face glued to that mass. Several, a collage of faces collected in the city, and sewn around a skull without identity. Each mouth opened in a while, each tooth glistened with flour. I filled my chest with useful anger, the one that lights the blade, not the one that blinds, and marked the pace. Tum, tum, tum tum. The temple listened. "You're going to stay, Major," came the whisper that isn't air. "Your fear tastes like a broken bridge." The bridge, another life, people in the water, I saw it. Tessa slapped me in the face with a light hammer of affection. Back. "Yours too," I replied. "It tastes like an empty church." The anthem went down to the low and pulled the room. The harpsichord followed and slipped half a tone. The temple tried to imitate and missed. I took 2 steps forward, cut a live handle with the knife, and was shocked by a hot ivory that smelled of warm ivory. Walrus covered. Ava advanced with me. Tessa grabbed 2 people by the scruff of the neck and laid them down slowly, singing quietly. We arrived at the altar. The throne rose, antennae opening like a crown. The cardinal showed himself, a column of bones and flesh, too many left hands, wires going in and out, and eyes of many. The sound he made was not an anthem. It was laughter. Ugly. Recognition that the fight was too short for his hunger. "Ava," I said without turning my face. "Raku is mute until I tell him to. Carnation, keep the world ugly. Walrus, break what you hold. Tessa, if I fall, props me up and doesn't let me sleep." "Sleep is a luxury," she said. "You don't." I took 1 step, 1 more, and the cardinal's voice came in multiple whispers. Street names, names of the dead, and my name said by children who do not exist. I tapped my breastplate on the compass, climbed the altar railing, cut 2 more cables, and pulled the side corner organs like someone who rips off bad tiles. The throne lost harmonics, the hymn failed, and the temple had a second of silence that hurt. "Not now," I said to myself and Ava at the same time, because a climax without an answer is a betrayal of memory. We have taken a step back. The cardinal plunged back into the well, dragging veins of bone. Cravo marked the descent route on the ground with spray. Walrus made his way by breaking the edge with his shield. Tessa attached a rope to my waist, and another to Ava's. "Climax, then," Ava said, wiping the blood from her ear with the back of her hand. "Come on," I confirmed. "And no one prays. Who sings today is our artillery." Morn Vale trembled up there, saying that there was still a city. The well breathed. I looked down and saw the underground nave, the vertebral steps, and the bioluminescent light streaking green on the water. I went down the first step. "March," I said, and the word held everything in place where it needed to be. We descended into what seemed to be the belly of the world. The silo shaft opened into an underground nave that no sensible engineer would approve of. Concrete columns dressed in ribs, vertebral walkways, and bridges of stiffened cartilage. The water at the bottom had a musty green glow that it learned to ignite. Cardinal Okoso's hymn came from here, profound, hitting in places where medicine does not put a name. Cravo set up the garbage organ on the landing, plugged in chains and sieves, and made the air creak in dissonance. Walrus took the lead with the shield. Tessa attached ropes to my belt and Ava's. Ava checked out the RAQ, reels marked red, breathing calm. I hit the breastplate. Tum, tum, tum-tum, reminding the body which compass we are following. 3 liturgists grew out of the ground like a bad mushroom. 4 meters, open ribs, hands too long. Their anthem was a test note. Walrus received the first one with a low shoulder, pushed it to the edge, and knocked it down like an ox on a ramp. I cut the tendon inside the trough of the second. He sang in pain in half a tone. Carnation scraped the spear in the sieve, a horrible sound, and the third missed his step. Tessa pulled my belt when the catwalk gave way. No one fell. The main anthem went down another tone, and the whole ship responded, as if the place had lungs. The cardinal's throne loomed beyond an arched bridge, a tangle of bony antennae, living cables that rose and fell, and in that center, a mass of stolen faces sewn to an identityless skull. Each mouth moved at a time. Everyone's eyes looked at everything and nothing. When he spoke, he did not use the ship. He used what we have inside. Major Dantas, Broken Bridge, Cold Water. 5 names you don't say out loud. I know them. I sing for you. Sing alone, I replied loudly, using air so that my ears could hear it too. Here, we are the ones who set the tone. Cravo has set up a wall of noise that does not become music even for charity. Barrels vibrating, chains beating, sieves scraping. It was ugly. Worked. The anthem of the throne has lost its edge. Walrus advanced with a high shield, carrying cartilage fragments in his face. I went with him, knife low, rifle short. Tessa glued to our shadows, fingers ready to glue someone back if they broke. Ava stood a step back, Ray-Q mute, measuring the right moment like a surgeon waiting for the cut to open on its own instead of forcing it. The arched bridge wept with our weight. The cardinal tuned reeds until the concrete vibrated in the same rhythm. The catwalk tried to throw us to his rhythm. Walrus saved the bridge with a body. He planted the shield, turned his hips, and broke the compass with human weight. I laughed humorlessly. Things we learned on the dock, in a nightclub, and on the construction site now held the world together. In the middle of the bridge, worshippers appeared on the side stairs, alive. Glass eyes, candle bones in hand. Behind them, a row of thin liturgists, ready to pick up what was left. I didn't want to throw people into the abyss, but I wanted to reach the throne. Tessa resolved before. "Lie down," she cried, and sang 2 short notes, one long, and paused. Those people bent their knees as if they remembered their own weight. Walrus took out candle bones with a hand that seemed to educate. I cut cables that came from the railing. Harpsichord threw more current into the amplifier. The bridge stopped wanting to dance with us. The throne opened a crown of antennae. The hymn rose thin, cutting like ice in the tooth. Ava leaned the rack against the armor and felt the pregame. Cravo gave me a crane compass, grave. Tessa gave me 2 touches on the back of the head. Walrus grabbed my shoulder just to remind me where I come from. The room held the air for 2 beats. I said first. Ava lit up. The world took away the sound. The throne only bent. It did not break. The cardinal's voices wavered and returned. First activation of the final stage, at the edge of the patched machine. The Ray-Q's display flashed alarm. The throne responded with a mouthless whistle. Picks everywhere. "Monday?" Ava asked, her chin hard not to tremble. "Mark again," Tessa said, firmly, without taking her eyes off me. I hit the breastplate. Tum, 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 tum. Cravo freaked out a screw from the sound wall and took the noise to a horrible, as well as ugly place, where the human ear can only stand it because it has a reason. Walrus broke the left support of the bridge with the shield, on purpose, creating an asymmetry that religious machines hate. Ava waited for the phone to breathe and lit it up again. Second activation. The throne cracked. An antenna broke. Several mouths shouted names that were not theirs. The anthem fell a notch. Liturgists stumbled. Believers regained their full gaze for a moment and cried without knowing why. Ava almost fell. Tessa glued her hands behind her back and kept standing. The Ray-Q blew the whistle like a wounded animal. "I have one more," Ava whispered, knowing it was a nice lie. "And you don't have one more." I looked at the throne. Cardinal Ocaso had come down to us. It was now. If we didn't break the corner, the city would turn to a bed of bones in the morning. I smelled mold and iron. I thought of the square with a fly standing still, of the boy with a cloth cap, and of the mother who asked if they would come back. I thought of the old bridge from another life. I thought of 5 names and hid the 5 behind my tooth. And he said, "The 3rd is mine again." Cravo did not argue. He connected my armor to the auxiliary coil by the cable he had kept as a last resort. Tessa stared at me like someone about to dive into black water. Walrus turned his body between me and the throne, protecting an opening at the same time. A paradox that only an old warrior understands. Ava lifted the Reiki with the elegance of someone who cuts a tumor in the corridor because there is no operating room. I filled my chest until it hurt. Fear as fuel, bent to measure, enough to ignite, not enough to burn the crew. I felt the sensor pick up my internal beat, not that of the breastplate, the tum of the wrong heart because of the anthem, the tum-tum I forced to obey. When I exploded, it was on the inside, and it came out on the outside. The throne cracked from the bottom to the top. The anthem became a breath without a body. The antennas broke in orders, the faces peeled off like wet masks. Liturgists lost their beat and plummeted into sacks, bones beating with the sound of a cracked cymbal. The green water was crushed to the corners like a tongue that runs away from the dentist. I fell and saw nothing for a second. The nothing smelled of a hot iron. Tessa brought me back with a slap that educates. I came back spitting blood that I swore wasn't mine. Ava crouched, rack smoking, her hands black with soot. Cravo laughed and cried at the same time, a perfectly ugly sound. Walrus shouted names of living people so that they would stay alive. "Pull over! Pull over! Pull over!" Tessa said, her hand on my neck, the other looking for my hand. Found. Arrested. Was. The cardinal was not yet silent. The mass of faces tried to talk to the rest of the antenna. Scattered whispers. My name in the voices of a child, an old man, a woman, a man, and an animal. I didn't listen. I did what I do when I need to leave the theater. Work. I cut live cables. 1, 2, 3. Walrus crushed the bases. 4, 5. Cravo pushed the noise until it turned into a beating. Ava turned off the Reiki with affection that only happens in the machine that saved you. Tessa sang a low line, not to the cardinal, but to us. The dough stopped moving. The anthem lost the last vowel. The silence arrived like a good noise. Leaks, metal that cools, and human breathing. Mornvale took his first breath since we woke up in this hell. "Sit rep," I said, the voice of someone who needs to check if the world is whole. "Reiki inoperative for activation," Ava replied, cutting with her arm the tears she herself hadn't authorized. "Dead coils, sensor. Alive. Me too." "Shield with your crumpled good arm," Walrus said, laughing shortly. "Sergeant still knows how to push mass." "Counter anthem on standby," Harpsichord said, fingers trembling from the discharge he pushed into nothingness. "I can raise an ugly wall if the anthem lifts again." "2 slightly wounded who were going to become hosts are already saved," Tessa announced. "The Major doesn't sleep. Yet." I went to what was left of the throne. In the middle of the bone and nerve goo there was a core, too small for everything he did. A cylinder of calcified cartilage with marks like a musical staff. Got. It was light. I wrote with pen in the body of the nucleus. Chorus of Acis. We give a name to what kills when we want to rule the wake. The ceiling dripped out. The silence breathed once more. Above I heard, far away, tractors stopping by choice, dogs barking without order, and a woman laughing because her son looked again. The city was returning. "Is it over?" Walrus asked, not out of fear, but out of accounting. "The choir has more churches in the sector, but the cardinal has lost the pulpit. It will take time to reopen the mouth." Ava leaned on my shoulder, lightly. Harpsichord turned off the amplifier, and the world was poor in sound again, which, for one afternoon, was wealth. Tessa opened the kit, looked at us one by one, and measured me like someone who measures the fever of a child who lies. I don't lie to doctors. I only ask for 5 minutes before the sermon. "Major," she said, serious and gentle, "you'll want to forget. I can give you some at the station, but he chooses what remains." I looked at the core, at the crumpled shield of the walrus, at the dirty hands of Ava, at the faithful eyes of the harpsichord, and at the strings of Tessa. Choose. "Here's what brought us here," I said. "The rest I'll leave to the ash choir." We started to rise. Cravo marked ugly arrows on the ground for civilians who would come to rescue their own. Walrus carried Faithful on his shoulder like sacks of flour, with delicacy that only large hands can. Tessa went ahead with the flashlight, saying "here" to those who returned. Ava caressed the dead Raku as if it were an old animal that she retired after saving her owner. I beat the armor, tum, tum, tum tum, just to remind you that the compass is ours. As he stepped out into the dappled light of the end of the day, Mornvale smelled of rain, not bones. Civilian radio burst with clicks and voices, requests, laughter, names, copied. Someone rang the wrong church bell on purpose. I smiled, tired. "Transmit," I said without poetry. "Mornvale holds, heart of the choir, silent. Proceed to clean, follow the ugly chalks, without heroism, work." I looked at the sky. It had no prism. Still, the world never ends. It just changes its tone. And when it changes, we will be in the right place, where the artillery sings. The next day, Mornvale woke up with a good noise. It wasn't singing. It was people. The dragging of pallets, hammers in tiles, and water hitting a gutter that became water again. I spent the night at the mnemonic purge station with Tessa, my eyes burning and my head full of what doesn't belong to me. Purging does not erase what matters. It only organizes and sweeps the dirt of the choir to a corner where the mind does not stumble. I lay on the metal stretcher, held the strap, and breathed in the rhythm it gave me. 2 touches on the temples, 1 on the base of the skull, the reverse psalm in a whisper, and a faint taste of almond remained on the tongue. When I got up, the broken bridge of the past was still there, as it should. Carnation laughed when the garbage organ worked, too. The face of the boy with a tampon was. The rest left, with the ash choir. Ava appeared in the doorway, hair tied up, the RAQ open on the countertop, dead coils like ribs on the plate. She wiped the body of the machine with a cloth like someone cleaning a wet dog. He saw me standing and raised his eyebrow. "Come on?" I nodded. She smiled the short way. She keeps crying for when no one is looking. He put his hand on the RAQ with affection and spoke softly. "We are going to give him a dignified retirement." Then we set up another one. 2, I corrected. Always 2. 1 to sing and 1 to remember. Walrus pushed in a door that he didn't want to open before. He brought a bag of human bones wrapped in a simple cloth, without a symbol. He did not call them leftovers. He called them people. He landed on the next seat and took off his helmet. The forehead had a new clean cut. Tessa closed with 2 stitches and a smile of someone who knows the sergeant's mind better than he does. "You need to sleep," she said. "I sleep better when there's noise," he replied, and stood there listening to the town set up. Carnation appeared last, the emaciated man who only appears after the war, with his fingers still trembling from having held too much noise. He gave 2 taps to the door frame as if asking permission and deposited with utter reverence a box. Inside, the sieves, the chains, 2 harvester blades, and the amplifier with his head down. "I'm not going to throw anything away," he warned. "Scrap is memory that works." "Gather and document," I said. "Mornvale will need this ugly song for a while." I went out into the light. The square that had been an ossuary in secret was now aground with chalk markings, a route for a truck, and a water point. On top of the old cathedral, the black triangle that I painted at the entrance became a mural, not of glory, but of service. Here, humanity hit first. No name, no bust, no speech. People passed by and did what the city asks, work. In the seed market before, flies stopped, now fares. The old man in the rumpled hat brought me a bag of uncontaminated grain and a bottle of something honest. We leaned our shoulders against the pillar and spent some time watching the children invent games where yesterday there was fear. One of them traced on the ground, with chalk, tum, tum, tum tum, and the others laughed at getting it right. I taught them that ugly music saves, and they turned it into a game. Humanity has this talent. It fixes what they tried to break us with dirty laughter in its teeth. On the radio, the civil command organized task and rest by block. The voice spoke with the clarity of tired people. Silos 6 and 8 cleaned, 3 with mold, isolated. Escort to collect hosts who were left sleeping. PSI team with Tessa on the north axis. Black sawdust in the drains, ugly chalks in sight. I confirmed it on my channel. I don't need to send when I hear that. I need to make sure that no one goes back to the rhythm that invites the enemy to sing. In the afternoon, we gathered on top of the central silo, now an open pit that breathes normally. Ava brought a makeshift map, made of brown paper, with the drawing of the Shroud 19 system. In red, the cities that still emitted certain noise. In gray, those who whispered too much. In white, silence. Sometimes silence is peace. Sometimes a fresh cemetery. Broadband telemetry was echoed in Dois Riachos and Arroyo Cavado, she said. It's not the main anthem. It's people asking for a step. We'll pass, Carnation said, pointing to the chalk he had used to draw the compass on the ground. I just tune it. The prisms? I asked, out of habit, about another hell. But if the Abyssal Choir has friends from afar, they'll want to know why an entire hymn ship fell silent. And then, perhaps, Glass will come to listen. Walrus stretched his back, looked at the horizon, and chewed nothing. He doesn't waste time predicting fashion. It builds margin. He pointed to the ground. What we raise here today gets beaten tomorrow. It asks for a thick foundation, and roots that no one repeats. I wrote it down, and it was to write it down for the world, not for my pocket. Tessa arrived from a tour in the eastern sector, with eyes that saw things and hands that arranged people in the frame of what remained. Hosts, 4 rescued with enough life and memory to return to their own home. 2 with fragments of the anthem stuck together. I've already isolated. 5 with no people inside, just shells. And a good one, no one tried to go back to the cathedral. Educated fear works. She stood next to me and pushed my jaw with 2 fingers. A doctor's trick that realigns the world. The world obeyed a little more. At sunset, we climbed the roof of the cathedral, now an antenna and water deposit, not the enemy's altar. I took the core of the throne, the calcified cylinder on which I wrote Choir of Acis. I put it on the edge, in plain sight, not as a trophy, but as a warning. I spoke on the open channel in broadband, in a dry voice without poetry to the surrounding systems. This is the Pale Fire Expeditionary Force. Morn Vale holds. For those who sing death, we learn harmony. If your anthem tries to teach an object to have a will, our artillery offers to teach an object to have weight. You listen to us because your will always leaves a trace. Follow this trail and find what's left of you. I left the microphone open for 10 seconds because sometimes the enemy responds and we record it. Only wind and people came working. Best music. We stood there, the team. Ava with her elbow on her knee, her eye on the dead RAQ. Walrus sunk in a chair that moaned, a carnation drawing on concrete with charcoal, always a different measure. Tessa with her hand on my neck, anchoring the world to a point no enemy can reach. I thought if it was worth saying something, that would become a memory. I decided for what was necessary. Tomorrow's rules, I said. No equal routes. Ugly chalk on the corners. Sawdust within reach of a child. Antennas without melody. Walrus escorts. Carnation, inverse psalm courses for civil. Ava, take your time dismantling the RAQ and make me too. Tessa, you define sleep. You define guilt, she returned, without malice. And only the one that is yours. I nodded. I know how to sign papers that stink. That's what the post exists for. Humanity does not win only by the machine. It wins because it accepts weight. Accepting weight is the opposite of praying for the miracle to come. It's carrying. At night, they installed a new bell at the top of the water tower. He doesn't play pretty. It plays wrong. It's deliberate. The first touch drew laughter and fright. I smiled too. Cravo wrote down the tuning of the bell, promising to make it a little more unbearable tomorrow. Ava zipped her jacket up to her chin and leaned her head against the wall. Walrus slept sitting up, with the entire weight of the world resting on him. Tessa made the rounds, gentle as infirmary light. On the radio, a long crack, then a voice that did not come from Mornvale. Freixo do Norte, accent of those who eat consonants. The accent, received pale fire. Here, a small hymn in an empty church, people with forgotten names. Do you have a manual? We have work, I replied. Here's the package. Don't repeat anything. The ugly saves. I sent the poor manual we made. How to build a garbage organ with a blade and barrel. How to mark tum-tum on the surface that returns. How to use black sawdust. How to teach children to listen to noise without fear. And black sawdust. How to bury bones with respect and no liturgy of the enemy. We also sent an ugly song by Cravo. In case the silence becomes too beautiful, he said. The other side thanked him with breath. In war, breath is the loudest yes. When I lay down, Mornvale no longer smelled of bones. It smelled like wet rust, bread in the emergency oven, and oil on the hinge that required grease again. Before closing my eyes, I marked in my notebook what Tessa told me to choose. I leave with the choir the laugh that wanted to possess me. I keep my team's hand on my shoulder. I'll keep the tum-tum who saved us at the bottom of the silo. I stay with the boy with the cloth plug who will learn to play the ugly bell. I stay with the silence with a pulse. In the middle of the night, the external channel lit up again. A short, binary, unsigned package from Abyssal. Ava got up, sleepy, and spun on the display. Cravo heard with his body. Walrus woke up already on his feet. Tessa put her hand on my neck and pulled me back from sleep like someone who lights a lamp. Empty cathedrals, 2 jumps, Ava translated. Structures ready with no cardinal yet. Someone is paving worship. I looked at the brown paper map. I drew 2 circles freehand. Mornvale stood in the middle, with the calcified core resting on the edge of the tower. Palefire is not a pretty fleet. It's tool-carrying people. Then let's go before the choir, I said, and the city, down below, responded with the noise of people who know how to wake up early, work,